Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Cricketwallah Chronicles with Ayaz Memon. Hi, this is Pooja from the Fan Garage and you're listening to the Cricketwallah Chronicles with Ayaz. The rains have finally arrived in Mumbai and here we are discussing the innovations that have been brought about in T20 cricket and how it has actually impacted the game. So whether it's IPL, Ayaz, we've seen the cheerleaders, we've seen player auctions, we've seen a fun feed, IPL nights. But how really have the various innovations that T20 cricket introduced has actually impacted the play on the field?
So I think, Pooja, it has had a major impact on the sport. Even if you look at it holistically, I think there are various facets that one can look at. One is in the promotion of the game. The T20 itself, the format, was introduced to ensure that fans get engaged with the sport.
Right. Bring in a newer set of audiences, bring in, a lot of
and
fun.
And how do you retain the old set? Because they were leaving the sport for others. I think
Correct.
The challenge for the administrators was there are so many more options now in terms of entertainment, leisure and sport, or if you club them together in the sportainment industry, as they say it,
yes.
that how do you keep fans engaged with cricket? So T20 and before that ODI cricket, it's an evolutionary path.
Correct.
Much to the dismay of a lot of traditionalists, but it has taken place. And I think what T20 has shown is that fans are willing to come back and engage with the sport in the shortest format because that's the nature of the modern age.
Exactly. I mean, this is a fan who's cash rich and time poor, and clearly this format fit best.
Yeah, that's true. Cash rich and time poor. I don't know about the cash rich part, but time poor certainly.
Yeah.
Because, it's a very hectic life that people lead now. Right. And even if it's to make two ends meet, there's not enough time that you've got to go and spend watching matches. And even if you're watching it on television, to watch a 5-day match for all 5 days or 4 days or whatever, however long it takes, may not be possible. So T20 has come in as a relief for the administrators. It's providing a lot of, I think, money, finances for the game, and therefore also it supports the upkeep of the longer format, which I think is really one of the purposes. And I think that purpose shouldn't be forgotten by the administrators, because you ask every and any player, they may, the modern players, the younger players may be skewed towards IPL, T20 because they find instant fame and money there. But for the best players, the biggest challenge is still Test cricket. And therefore, the upkeep of Test cricket, the 5-day format, the ultimate test, as they say, of not just technique but temperament, should be sustained and maintained. That's my belief. I'm a great supporter of Test cricket. But having said that, how has T20 cricket impacted the sport? In many ways. I think in the promotion of the sport, you had to embellish it with many things which were alien to cricket,
right,
which were not part of cricket's culture or ethos. For instance, cheergirls was unthinkable.
Yes.
If you look back, forget about 125, 130 years ago, even if you look back 30 years ago, you couldn't think of cheerleaders. Yes, colored clothing had come in, night cricket had come in, but cheerleaders, for God's sake, so things like that have come in, and, eyebrows were raised. There was a lot of, I thought, cantankerous criticism about what, the despoiling of a very pure sport, so to speak.
Right.
But I think overall, when you look at it, these are just embellishments that have come in to engage largely the television viewership, which is where all sports is now headed.
Absolutely.
Whether it's football or baseball or hockey or any sport, unless you have a sizable television audience, you cannot sustain the sport. Covering a sport, showing a sport, telecasting a sport, conducting a tournament requires mega bucks. How do you support that? You have to have, a funnel which sucks in the money from the economy or from wherever else through television.
Right.
That's your best and perhaps the only option to sustain or support the sport. And unless you make it a good, an exciting spectacle on television, then the viewers will migrate to other sports or other forms of entertainment. I think that's something that cricket has absorbed very well from the American experience with sport and also with the Australian and English, because that's where at least the innovations in cricket have started there.
Right.
Whether it's in England, where one-day cricket and then T20 cricket kind of originated, or Australia, where technological advances took place. And therefore, technology becomes the second facet.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is very important.
It was very important to keep up with, modern-day innovative technology, whether it's the spider cams or the LED stumps, the zing bales as they are called.
Correct.
Clearly to keep television viewers engaged, involved, and also in-stadia audiences sort of hooked in.
So television as a medium itself irrespective of sport, is always in a state of evolution and constant breaking down and reconstructing.
Yeah.
Whether if you're watching a talk show or a soap opera or whatever else it is, even there they have to keep inventing or reinventing. And therefore this spreads even to sport. It doesn't, as long as it doesn't meddle with what really actually happens on the field of play in terms of playing, I think that there is a lot of license that can be given, and which license even the cricket administrators have taken.
Yes.
So players being mic'd up, so to speak, and talking while they are playing.
Right.
Technology now enables that the hindrance or the disturbance or the intrusion is minimal. It's not like, he has to hold his the mic to his ear.
Correct.
And drop guard, and if a catch comes his way, he'll lose it. And players, ultimately even human beings are evolutionary creatures. We evolve very rapidly to different sets in different situations and different circumstances. And so people are, in a sense, also multitasking. They are talking and they are fielding. They're not talking in bowling.
Right.
They're not talking in batting.
Correct.
But when you're in the field, if you're at fine leg or third man or wherever else, you're talking to the commentator or to the audience through the commentator.
Yes.
And therefore bringing a feel of a real life experience for the viewer.
Yeah, an on-ground perspective of what
Correct.
it means to be on the field of play.
Correct. And therefore you get insights into how the team, that particular player himself or the team is thinking, what the strategy might be, and therefore asking yourself how the bowler or the batsman may respond. And that's one of the things which keeps viewers really absorbed. So these are changes that have come in because of T20. The reason being, essentially, that the time is very restricted. It's action-packed.
Right.
It's high octane.
Yeah.
There's not a moment to waste. And every moment is priceless, like every delivery is.
Yes.
You can't afford to waste one delivery. A dot ball in T20 cricket is anathema.
Yeah, a maiden over is harakiri, right?
Maiden over, you might be out of the system, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that it's a whole new dimension to the sport which has been added. In fact, a multi-layered approach, where all kinds of things are happening simultaneously. So you've got technology, the bails flying off, LED lights.
Yes.
in the bails, players being mic'd up, the cheerleaders around. It's, in a sense, it's evolved a whole new world in itself. And parts of that are then migrating to the other formats also. Some of them have come from one-day cricket.
Yeah.
They're going back to one-day cricket, more reinforced. Test cricket. So what is happening now in Test cricket? We're going to have a pink ball test.
Yes.
We've already had one.
Yes.
And on virtually an experimental basis. But now, almost every country, every cricket board is saying, let's have pink ball day-night cricket.
Correct.
They've seen the success of that match. There are some reservations that players have. Australian and New Zealand players have expressed some reservations. Others are saying, even somebody like an A.B. de Villiers is not convinced that the pink ball experiment will work. But hey, the administrators are worried that if they don't do it now, if they don't introduce it now, then there'll be more migration from Test cricket to other sports.
So it's almost become compelling for all cricket boards to introduce some element of innovation in each format of the game now.
Absolutely. And I think, look, I think you have to be realistic. You have to be pragmatic in these matters. I remember in the World Cup, which was played in South Africa, and there was a goal line there was a goal. It hit the bar.
Yeah.
It went inside the goal line, bounced out, and it was not given as a goal because football was not using Hawkeye.
Right.
And there was a furor.
Yes.
And even the football administration, the FIFA administration said, no, our sport is like this and this is, all kinds of
Correct. Yes.
explanations were given. But subsequently, when they realized what the viewer reaction to that was, because as a viewer, I could see that it was a goal.
Correct.
And
yes.
it was being disallowed because the match referee was somewhere else. He possibly could never see it with his naked eye.
Right.
And was not making use of technology to correct what was an obvious wrong.
Yes.
So FIFA also changed its mind.
Right.
And now you've got Hawkeye introduced in football.
Yeah.
So I think the use of technology is becoming more widespread in other sports too, and therefore cricket, why should it be exempt? In T20, all of this gets enhanced because it is very short, sharp, and total action, so to speak. Everything is happening almost concurrently. If there's a 4 hit or a 6 hit, and there are many of these hit in a T20 game, instantly there'll be the blaring of the bugles and,
yes.
whatever the music that is created at the stadia. The cheerleaders will dance. The replays will show how the ball was hit out of the park. Or if a player is out, dismissed, there'll be immediate replays of the dismissal, and technology comes into play, and all of this is packed into a 3.5-hour game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for cricket watchers, cricket lovers who had been used to the very languid pace of Test cricket, was a dramatic departure. But I suspect, in fact, I don't suspect, I'm convinced that the younger generation, the newer generation, those who are being introduced to the game now, they are seeing this as par for the course, as normal.
They don't know any different.
Yeah. So, we've talked about this earlier. When one-day cricket first came in and coloured clothing was introduced, the older people of my generation and earlier, they called it pajama cricket because it was beyond their understanding that cricket could be played, need not be played in whites, need not be played with the red ball when the white ball came in.
Right.
But those who've grown up in the last 35, 40 years since one-day cricket has come, they've not seen cricket otherwise. So for them, it's a natural thing. I think that's how, tastes change, attitudes change, and the understanding of the sport changes. It's the evolutionary path.
But yet again, in terms of the technology, we've seen newer camera angles coming into play now.
Correct.
In fact, for the YouTube feed, there are different camera angles which come into play, keeping the viewers really entertained in terms of what happens behind the scenes, or not necessarily all cricketing action. So a lot of players used to find, for example, the spider cam, obtrusive.
It still is.
Yes.
A lot of people find it obtrusive. It's almost like what used to happen earlier with the side screen.
Yeah.
Somebody walking in front of the side screen, the batsman would stop play, ask the guy to be removed. Sometimes it happens. The spider cam, some batsmen object to it and therefore it's removed.
Right.
It affects their concentration or whatever. The point over here is there are two things. One is that even the players themselves understand that technology, or the wider use of technology, has become imperative for them, for the sport to survive, and therefore for them to also to survive. Covering sport or telecasting sport today is a mighty expensive proposition. And therefore, unless the use of 32 cams or 36 cams from 2 cameras earlier on either side of the ground,
right,
behind the wickets, is an exponential growth in the way cricket is being covered. It's a function of what the viewer wants to see or what I can give for viewer delight. And also, the second part, don't forget, it's damn expensive.
Yes.
Covering sport is perhaps the most expensive thing you can do on television. You can create a set and have a soap opera shot there for, 52 weeks,
right,
week after week, not changing much.
Correct.
But even at the same ground, if you're playing, matches day after day, the use of so much equipment and the constant changing of the texture of the pitch, and all of it is cost intensive. And therefore, to support that cost is something that the marketing of cricket becomes, or any sport, becomes very, very fundamental to the existence of the sport.
Yes.
This is also something that cricket administrators perhaps realized a little late compared to some of the other sports like football or boxing or tennis, which were more willing to dive into the use of technology, the use of cheerleaders, the use of razzmatazz, so to speak, because cricket had a very kind of pristine position in the world of sport, and they wanted to maintain that ethos. Nothing wrong with it, except that times change dramatically, drastically.
You have to change with the times.
You have to change with the times, otherwise you can't survive.
The whole concept of dugouts was never before seen in cricket.
Correct.
And yet today you have the whole team and the coaching bench sitting huddled up in a dugout.
It's also a function, what I call, when the world got flat, and we were more exposed to how sports are covered in the US.
Right.
I'm talking of Indian audiences or Asian audiences.
Yes.
And we said, hey, we've never seen something like this.
Right.
Yeah. You watch the opening of the first game of a Super Bowl or the final.
Yeah.
It may be a 90-minute game, but it's an experience. You can spend the whole day watching it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's all the drama that is built around it, or the heavyweight boxing bouts that we see.
Yes.
The bout may itself last about max an hour.
Yeah.
Or maybe 75 minutes. But the build-up to it is...
It's marketed as a top dollar, top billing event.
Correct. And we've seen that happen in India-Pakistan matches.
Yes.
In World T20 or World Cup and stuff like that. So I'm saying there's an extension, because you have to go out and exploit the appeal of the sport, the appeal of the contest in various ways, whether it's a traditional rivalry like the Ashes in Test cricket or Indo-Pak cricket in whichever format, and exploit it with the use of technology, with the use of razzmatazz, with the use of sentimentalism, emotionalism, what have you.
Yeah.
Because it is a damn expensive thing to show sport. Today, sport is not restricted to the 15-20,000 people who come and watch at the ground.
Right.
The best audience you might get even for a T20 game. Suppose you have an India versus Pakistan final, which is the biggest thing you can have
Yes.
in modern cricket.
Yeah.
And you have either the MCG or Eden Gardens. You're
Correct.
going to have 75, 80, 90,000 people.
At best, yes.
But if you have a telecast of that match, you're going to have close to 1 billion people.
Yeah, if not more.
If not more.
Yeah.
How do you keep them engaged? They're not part of the direct action directly, in the sense they're not live present at the ground. How do you make them feel engaged? How do you build up the tempo? How do you build up the excitement? These are all challenges that all sports administrators face.
Yes.
And cricket, which had in a sense kept a backseat or kept itself in the backseat for many years, for almost a century, has now caught on very fast. And things are happening. Dramatic changes are happening in the ICC and the BCCI. One of the things that, as a digression, they're mulling at making domestic cricket more exciting by having non-zonal Duleep Trophy matches, Ranji Trophy matches at neutral venues. We don't know where it will go, but I'm just saying that administrators have to keep evolving, thinking what they will do to keep the fans engaged or get fans who have migrated back to them.
We'll take a short break here, Ayaz. Some very valid points. But as we see technology bringing in innovations to the game at the same time, especially in the format of T20, we've also seen the players themselves innovating with the kind of action that they put out on the field, whether it's bowling, batting or fielding. We'll discuss all that and more when we come right back.
Who's ahead in the league and what's cooking off the pitch? We at TFG bring all that you need to know about Indian football. Discussions, debate, banter, in-depth analysis with a touch of fun and fandom. This is the TFG Indian Football Podcast and we're a daily show. So check us out on YouTube and various other podcasting apps like iTunes, Audioboom, SoundCloud, etc.
Hi, this is Pooja from the Fan Garage and we're back listening to the Cricketwallah Chronicles with Ayaz, discussing the very many innovations that T20 cricket has brought into modern day cricket today. But let's just take a few moments, Ayaz, to discuss the innovations that cricketers themselves have brought into their game. I mean, never before had we heard of the Dil Scoop, the switch hit, Ashwin's carom ball, Narayan's knuckle ball. Yeah. And this is just the bowlers. We've seen the batsmen and their innovations in a league of its own.
And the fielders.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the relay catches.
The relay catches which have actually become commonplace.
Yes.
It's no longer a novelty. When we first saw it, we said, hey, we never thought this was possible. It was almost a kind of a baseball-like attempt. You see baseball, the fielders, so to speak, in baseball on the fence.
Yeah.
And the spectacular catches that they would bring off. No, I think, look, the T20 format has crunched the essential virtues, in my opinion, into a very short space of time. So, in regular conventional cricket, you would see great batting, great bowling and great fielding. The texture and the tenor of the sport has changed from 5-day to T20, from 5-day to 1-day and from 1-day to T20.
Yeah.
So, you would see great fielding even in a test cricket format. Great slip catching, great cover fielding.
Yeah.
Great fielding it.
But it was spread out over 5 days.
Correct. So
essentially, ODIs then crunched that up into 1 day.
Into 1 day. And now it's crunched into 3.5 hours, 20 overs each side. But why it's become so essential for players to be, I think there are two facets again here. One is you have to be in the moment. In T20 cricket, you can't afford your mind to waver and wander off somewhere else. Yeah. So just to highlight it, it might seem like a banal example, but in a 5-day format, if you're fielding at fine leg, you might not get the ball coming to you for a long time.
Yeah.
Or third man, for instance.
Yes.
It could happen if a fast bowler is bowling, but otherwise not.
Yeah.
And you could, be humming a song and nobody would even see or care what was really happening. In a T20 format, because everything is crunched to such a short time and every delivery is crucial for the batsman, for the bowler and for the fielder, you can't afford your mind to waver. And therefore, because you are completely in that moment and focused entirely on that one delivery, you have to do things that enhance your team's cause and your own. Otherwise, the cost is very heavy. So, as we've discussed, in the past, playing out a maiden over might get you, get your head chopped off from the team. The bowler might have bowled extremely well.
Yeah.
And due credit to him. But if you've played out a maiden over, then something is fundamentally wrong with you.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you get hit for 6 fours or, something like that in an over, then something is wrong with you as a bowler.
Correct.
I'm saying this very in a matter-of-fact way, obviously there are more dimensions to it. For instance, bats have become better, boundaries have become shorter, the challenges for bowlers are greater, how to prevent the runs. Earlier, as always in limited overs cricket, the belief was prevent the runs, stop the flow of runs, don't allow the batsman to score more runs, and therefore you'll have a lesser target to chase, or you will bowl them out, restrict them to a lower total. As even the T20 game has evolved, you've realized, or bowlers have realized, coaches have realized, and captains have realized that it is important to take wickets.
Yes.
If you don't take wickets, you'll soon have a flurry of runs coming because batsmen or batting teams have preserved their wickets and can afford to take more risks.
Right.
Fundamental to the T20 game is high risk at all times. If you are not prepared to take high risks, then you cannot succeed as a T20 cricketer, whether as a batsman or as a bowler. Bowler, when I say high risk, it doesn't mean you start to bowling full tosses and say high risk, I'm waiting for the batsman to see if he can hit me out of the park. It's not that. The high risk for the bowler is also because he imposes on himself certain, tests that he has to do. For instance, in a six ball over, what kind of variations can I bring for pace? I mean, fast bowlers today are bowling spin.
Yeah.
They're literally bowling at the pace of a spinner, 95, 100, 105. There are fast bowlers who are bowling slow bouncers. It seems like an anachronism that somebody is bowling a bouncer which is slow, but it's happening.
Yes.
There are spinners who are doing, as you mentioned, the knuckle ball or the carom ball.
Yeah.
The whole contest has become one of trying to outthink within a very short spell of time the rival.
Yes.
And supported by extraordinary fielding if you're a fielder.
Yes.
And obviously, if you're a batsman, you need people in the dugout, your other batsmen to support you. I mean, this is
and
a
also
team
in a format which is
game.
very heavily skewed towards the batsman. I mean,
It may not necessarily be like that. It may be perceived like that. On the face of it, it looks like that. But this year's IPL, for instance, your three biggest performers were Virat Kohli, David Warner and AB de Villiers, all three batsmen. But that's because we've always been hung up on batsmen. Because batsmen's centuries and averages seem to matter more.
Yeah, absolutely.
But actually, the larger successes have come in the bowling.
Right.
There have been a lot of bowlers who've done extremely well, including fast bowlers and spinners.
Yes.
So somebody like a Chahal, leg spinner, done extremely well, finds a place in the Indian team to Zimbabwe.
Right.
Bhuvneshwar Kumar does extremely well, not because of his pace, but because of his variations and his skill as a swing bowler, and comes back fortified as an India player. So it's not that the bowlers have not taken wickets, they've taken a lot of wickets. The interplay between bat and ball even now seems skewed in favor of batsmen, which it is, and I have a suggestion here that administrators should not bring in the boundaries, given that the bats have become so much better and players have become fitter and stronger. Even in the IPL, you don't need 65, 67 yard boundaries when you can actually have 75, 73 yard boundaries.
Right.
Give the bowlers and fielding
And that, in
sides.
fact, was a suggestion one season, but it didn't sort of see light of day.
And subsequently, when infrastructure is made, stadia are made, please don't make stadia with 70 yard boundaries. Prepare in advance, because if bats are going to get even better and 90 yard and 100 yard hits are going to become commonplace, you need at least I would imagine, an 80 yard boundary to make the game more even between batsmen and bowlers. But that apart, so I think essentially it's a battle of wits, it's a battle of skills, it's a battle of nerves. Ultimately, that's what it is. The ability to take risks and high risks, and how much I can take risk and get away with it. So a Dil scoop, for instance, is a shot played by a batsman over his own head.
Yeah.
If you miss it, you might get hit in the face.
And that was further improvised by de Villiers.
I mean, all kinds of improvisations within the Dil scoop are happening.
Yes, absolutely.
So there is what I'm saying is that the whole technical aspect of the game is being diced up into more and more, propensity for taking risks and doing sharper things within the same technical thing. For instance, if you're playing the cover drive, now you have to take the risk and play the lofted cover drive, even if you may have a sweeper cover and a short cover.
Yeah.
If you don't take that risk, you might not make the runs that your team needs or what you need. And if taking that risk means that you might get out, then you have to position or finish with the execution of the stroke in such a way that you hit it beyond the reach of the short cover and wide away from the deep cover. So that much, you have to use your mind.
Yes.
The ingenuity of stroke play or bowling comes in, and therefore also I must say, even you mentioned about the relay catch in fielding.
Yeah.
But in fielding, I think essentially what has happened is that the fitness levels have become extraordinarily good. Cricket was never seen as an athlete's game,
Yes.
at least in the subcontinent.
Correct.
You've had podgy, cubby guys playing test cricket in India, even in England.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely. Yeah.
Colin Cowdrey, Colin Milburn. Some of these guys wouldn't find a place in the team now just because the way they looked, not
Yeah.
because they were bad players.
Yeah, of
you know.
course. I mean, they didn't necessarily look lean, fit,
the
muscle
natural
machines.
athletes were always the West Indians, the South Africans, who we didn't see much of when we were growing up because they were, debarred, and the Australians,
Yes.
the New Zealanders, but they were never as good in terms of skills. They become very good now. But everybody today has to be fit. In fact, if you're not fit enough, you might get dropped from the team
Yeah.
for
As we
long
saw,
periods, as we saw with Sarfaraz Khan.
Yes,
He's
absolutely.
one of the star young emerging players for RCB. He didn't find a place in the team after 2 or 3 matches because he was just not found fit enough.
Right.
You might make 25 runs and give away 20 runs. Therefore, the captain decides, it doesn't serve my cause.
Yeah. But clearly the need for players themselves to innovate, so to speak, whether it's innovative shot making.
You have to think on your feet. As I mentioned, you have to be in the moment. You can't afford to let... So, it's like Test cricket is a game of chess. You can plot and plan for... When you take the field of play in the morning, you don't know how the pitch might behave. Suppose, if the conditions seem normal, and you wait and see how the pitch unfolds, and therefore the captain makes a reading of the pitch along with senior players and decides that maybe in the second session when the sun is beating down, this might happen, or by the evening session, something may happen in the pitch. That's when I will introduce spinners.
Yeah.
You're plotting and planning. You're playing it like a long drawn game of chess.
You have time on your hands.
Trying to outthink.
Yeah.
And there's a great psychological dimension to it also, because you can plot the dismissal of a batsman, a spin bowler or a swing bowler, keep making him play the outswinger, then bowl an in-swinger if you've got the ability.
Yeah.
Or a spin bowler who's trying to beat him in flight, tying him down with a defensive line, and then, trying to do something extraordinary. Spread over a period of time. You plot the dismissal of a batsman.
Correct.
In this, there is not much time.
Right.
You have to think on your feet. The thing is, the batsman also doesn't have time to say, I'll play out the danger from this bowler.
Yeah.
In a restricted sense, you can. But you can't play out 4 maiden overs from Sunil Narayan.
Absolutely not.
And saying that I don't know what the hell is happening because he can turn the ball either way with the same action. I can't read him. If you can't read him, then you have to show some, guts and glory syndrome and try and hit the guy out of the park or do something, rotate the strike. Otherwise, you're gone.
Yes.
So I think the need to improvise is intrinsic to the game. When I say need to improvise, it does not necessarily mean only fancy shots. Virat Kohli showed us in this IPL season all through that he could play regular cricket shots.
Some classic cricketing
shots and make the highest number of runs.
Yes, absolutely. So, likewise with Ajinkya, very classic style of play.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is very strong nerves, obviously fitness.
Yes.
And a very alert mind, constantly looking for possibilities to score or prevent the scoring if you're bowling and fielding.
Yeah.
And therefore, within those parameters, it's a given, it's a no-brainer. In cricket, you have to do it. Even in Test cricket, the batsman has to score enough runs, so that you bowl the other team out and you win.
Yeah, you just pace
Everything
it out
here
differently.
is like, that is classical chess, this is rapid chess also.
Yes.
You have to make 40 moves in so-and-so time, whatever it is.
Yes.
So in a sense, it's like that. It's a shift in the ethos to the extent that it's rapid-fire thinking, and therefore, execution of ideas is also rapid fire therefore the success and failure rate is also very mercurial.
Yeah.
Something works, it works. If it doesn't work, it's gone. Ben Stokes bowled the last over of the World T20. He was their best bowler in the semi-final.
Yeah.
In the death overs. He comes and bowls the last over, 24 runs to get, and what does Carlos Braithwaite do? He hits him for 4 sixes. Yeah. Because he has no choice. He has to show the guts. He has to take the risk.
Absolutely.
The margin of error is minimal, and hey, what happens? You have the most dramatic finish perhaps seen in T20 cricket.
Yes.
But also, Pooja, and I think maybe that's where we were leading to finally, and we should, is that all of this has also impacted the other formats. A very cursory glance, if you take at Test cricket, for instance, there are more results in the last 15 years in Test cricket, and certainly in the last 10 years, than ever before in any decade span. Maybe 73-74% test match results. If you look back, see, the point I'm trying to make is limited overs cricket came in because there were no results in test matches.
Yeah.
So one-day cricket came in. Then one-day cricket got predictable and audiences or spectators started veering away from even ODI cricket. So T20 came in. T20 has captured the imagination of spectators. Because of T20 and earlier one-day cricket, what has happened is that the risk-taking, the propensity to do things offbeat, improvise, is also getting into regular cricket.
Yeah.
So more results are taking place. Yes, matches are finishing in 3.5 days. But you're seeing some very good cricket. And I'm not one of those who believes that the quality of cricket has dropped. If you look at the best batsmen in the world today, A.B. de Villiers, currently playing cricket.
Yeah.
A.B. de Villiers, Virat Kohli, David Warner, Joe Root, Kane Williamson, Steve Smith. These are the best batsmen.
Absolutely, yeah.
Even Hashim Amla. He's not such a success in T20, but in ODI. They are champions at Test cricket. They are champions in ODI cricket. And barring Hashim, who's not really made big impact, though he actually has a strike rate which is very similar to Virat Kohli's in T20 internationals, they are formidable in every format. So, to say that T20 will finish off Test cricket because those kind of batsmen will not come is a fallacy. I think, like human beings adapt to all situations. If there's a war, we live in warlike conditions and adapt to it. If there is no war and it's a very different kind of a situation, we start to live differently.
Yes.
In terms of strife, in times of strife, or in terms of, what I'm saying is that as creatures, we learn to adapt. And therefore, we also learn to adapt in sport.
Yeah.
And that's what we are seeing. Initially, there will always seem that, hey, something is going completely haywire. It's not. The challenges will be different. People will react differently to those challenges. A Virat Kohli in Test match has shown so far and should show a different kind of temperament from T20 or ODIs.
Yeah.
And so the bowlers also. I must admit here that the bowlers are under duress.
With the innovations brought about by T20?
No, so I'm saying, but even there, if you look, Dale Steyn has not had a very good time in T20 or ODIs of late, but he's 33.
Yeah.
But 5 years back, he was having a great time in limited overs cricket as well as Test cricket. R. Ashwin was, India's foremost bowler in Tests and the limited overs formats. Mitchell Starc is now the best Australian bowler in Tests as well as limited overs cricket. You can protect your bowlers, but James Anderson would be a handful, or Stuart Broad, even in limited overs cricket, as they are formidable in Test cricket.
Absolutely,
Or Mohammad Amir. So I'm saying, if you've got the skill sets right, you will learn to adapt.
That's the point.
What you bring from the limited overs format is a sense of energy and a sense of urgency, and most importantly, a greater sense of risk-taking to produce results. That's the shift in mindset.
Yes.
You're playing more and more to derive or get results.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is even good for the 5-day format.
Well, clearly, we've seen several innovations in T20, some introduced by administrators, some led by technology, and some brought about by players clearly on the field of play themselves. But as we've known, and as Dhoni has also famously said, it's a very thin line between innovations and being gimmicky.
Yes.
We've also seen some innovations which never saw the light of day, whether it was the heart rate monitors or the camera following the players into the dressing room.
It might come. You never know.
You never know. Absolutely. That is the process of evolution and the demands of modern day consumerism.
Yeah.
But of course, T20 is here to stay, and clearly the innovations have a huge following across the world, and we're only too happy for that.
Yes.
Thank you for listening in. Signing off from the Cricketwallah Chronicles.
Thank you, Pooja.
Thank you. Cricketwallah Chronicles is available on iTunes, Audioboom, YouTube, the IVM Podcast app, and many other podcasting apps that you may like.
Hey man, just help me out, man. I need some podcasts, man. I haven't had a fix in a week. Just need some.
Don't you worry about it. I got podcasts galore for you, man. Just go to ivmpodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna check it out.